There's something deliciously eerie about the way Stephen King pulls characters from one book and tucks them into another like he's building his own cinematic universe, minus the spandex and post-credit scenes. Case in point, Atropus. Creepy little characters who linger in your brain long after you've closed the book. If you've read Insomnia, you'll know him as small, twitchy, mean as hell, and weirdly obsessed with scissors and string. And yes, also has a habit of messing with people's fates. But here's where things get interesting. Atropus doesn't just exist in Insomnia. There's a strong chance we've seen his influence before in the Langoliers, of all places. Yeah, those chomping meatball creatures that devour the past and kinda look like rejected Pac-Man villains. There's a suspicious overlap in the way they both treat time, fate, and people who don't belong where or when they are. So, in this marvelous video, let's do a bit of time hopping. We're digging into Atropus's weird, unsettling origins, figuring out where he came from and how he fits into King's bizarre universe. But there's no denying, this little guy's more important than he looks. Let's get into it. But before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Atropus? Atropus is one of the darker forces in Stephen King's vast multiverse, a supporting antagonist with ancient roots and blood-stained purpose. He shows up as a key antagonist in King's Insomnia, where he plays second fiddle only to the Crimson King, but his reach stretches much farther. He haunts the pages of Pet Sematary as one of its invisible dooms, working alongside the Wendigo to ruin lives just because he can. Atropus is a supernatural entity, non-human, ancient, and disturbingly cheerful about death. He belongs to a trio of beings known as the Little Bald Doctors in the book Insomnia. These aren't your friendly neighborhood physicians. Like cosmic guardians of destiny, these extraterrestrial beings control the human lifelines. Now, two of them, Clotho and Lachesis, are all about order and balance. But then there's Atropus. He's the rogue, the saboteur. While Clotho and Lachesis aim to maintain the purpose, Atropus serves the random, which represents chaos. Clotho and Lachesis quietly guide those fated to die of old age or disease. However, Atropus cuts lives short. He delights in snipping life threads before their time, and he does it without remorse, especially when it throws off the balance of things. In fact, that's kind of his whole jam, disruption. Stephen King didn't pull this guy out of thin air. He reimagined Greek mythology's three fates, also known as the Moirai. In Greek mythology, these deities were responsible for the lifespans of mortals. Clotho spins the thread of life, Lachesis measures it, and Atropus cuts it. King took this concept and ran it through the Dark Tower-flavored blender. In Insomnia, these beings are literal, interdimensional entities who manipulate the lifespan of every living being, using invisible threads that can be seen only under special circumstances, like when you've had too little sleep for way too long. Hence the title of the book. Atropus in King's version is a cosmic being operating on a higher plane of existence than humans and even above many traditional supernatural creatures in King's world. In the hierarchy of King's multiverse, yep, he's got one, Atropus is somewhere between a creepy entity and a minor god. He exists alongside or beneath other big players like the Crimson King, Gon, and Maturin, King's space turtle. He has this uncomfortable sense of humor that makes his character all the more repulsive. You're not just dealing with a harbinger of death, you're dealing with one who likes what he does and who actively fights against the order of the universe. Atropus is also not explicitly one of the Prim, the original pre-universe creatures in the Dark Tower lore, but he's clearly tapped into the same metaphysical current. His service to the random links him ideologically with the Crimson King, who is basically the embodiment of destruction and chaos in King's multiverse. What's especially fascinating is that Insomnia acts like a kind of spiritual prequel to the Dark Tower. Characters in Insomnia are subtly and sometimes blatantly connected to the bigger metaphysical struggle in King's universe, with Atropus representing one of the many agents who want to disrupt the beam, the cosmic order holding everything together. Role of Atropus in Stephen King mythos. In Insomnia, Stephen King digs deep into the machinery of life and death, and Atropus is one of the nastier gears in that system. Atropus is as old as humanity itself. Like his counterparts Clotho and Lachesis, he deals with the lifelines of mortals. But unlike them, Atropus is loyal to the Crimson King, cutting short the lives of people. Plane crashes, car wrecks, violent crimes, or fast-moving diseases, these are his handiwork. He's handed lists of names by his Dark Master, people marked for sudden, senseless death, and shows up right as they die to sever their thread of life at just the right moment. Their assignments, and Atropus has been fulfilling them since the dawn of human history. While Clotho and Lachesis might serve some gentler force, maybe even Matron the turtle, Atropus is pure chaos. His impact stretches far beyond the moments he appears. He's the unseen force that ended Gage Creed's short life in Pet Sematary, and most likely at work during every massacre in Derry during its cycle of terror, snipping the threads of each doomed child it claims. On Earth, humans' lives are called short-timers, or just shorts, because they are fragile and fleeting compared to the higher dimensional beings known as long-timers, like Atropus and his crew. Above them sit the Eternals, beings who exist beyond time altogether, where titans like it and Matron operate. Atropus, along with Clotho and Lachesis, exist somewhere between those layers. As personifications of death, Atropus, Clotho, and Lachesis likely inspired real-world death gods like Thanatos, Kali, and Baron Samedi. As we already know, Atropus serves the Crimson King, and in Stephen King's Insomnia, the story starts when Susan Day, a pro-choice activist, heads to Derry, yep, that Derry, to give a speech in support of abortion and women's rights. The Crimson King marks her and thousands of her supporters for death, so Atropus is sent to the town of Derry as well to cut lifelines when disaster strikes. To get the job done, Atropus selects Ed DiPino, an ordinary man he visits and pushes towards madness. The Crimson King severs his thread of life, just not all the way. He leaves Ed in a limbo state, more like a walking corpse than a man, essentially a revenant. Ed spirals into madness, driven on by Atropus's whispers and taunts. His behavior gets increasingly erratic. At one point, he breaks down in public, accusing a laborer of secretly burying infant corpses. Meanwhile, Ralph Roberts, the novel's main character, a retired widower in Derry, like many of Atropus's targets, begins suffering from intense insomnia. The less Ralph sleeps, the more he begins to see strange, impossible things. Glowing auras surrounding people, death bugs crawling on people marked to die, mysterious figures walking the streets, invisible threads tying individuals to their destinies, and mysterious bald figures in white coats who appear to collect souls when people die. At first, Ralph thinks he's going crazy, but he soon realizes he's been woken up. His insomnia has unlocked a hidden perception of reality, a layered reality where life and death are quite literally manipulated by higher beings. That's when he meets two entities named Clotho and Lachesis, who introduce themselves as agents of the Purpose, a benevolent force that maintains order in the universe. Soon after, he and fellow insomniac Lois ascend to a higher dimension, where they learn their roles in a much bigger cosmic game and the hidden purpose behind the strange events unraveling in Derry. But while Clotho and Lachesis guide, Atropus stalks. He haunts Ralph and lets him know when death is near. Ralph sees glowing auras around people, followed by disturbing signs of imminent death, dark bags, crawling death bugs, and a grim sense of finality in the air. When Atropus shows up wearing a friend's hat, Ralph realizes that the friend's time is up. At one point, Atropus tries to kill a dog, but Ralph stops him twice. But in the end, Atropus finally wins and severs the dog's lifeline. Atropus then steals a pair of Lois's earrings, ones originally taken by her daughter-in-law. Ralph tracks him down to his lair and cuts a deal. Return the earrings, and no one else in Derry dies. Atropus gives them back, but makes it clear that he's just a middleman. If Ralph wants real answers, he'll have to face the Crimson King. Ralph slashes Atropus across the scalp. Not enough to kill him, but enough to send a message. Humans might be short-timers, but they can fight back. However, Ralph's mercy earns him a grudge. Humiliated and furious, Atropus swears revenge. He vows to kill 6-year-old Natalie Deepnow, Ed's daughter and his wife, if Ralph doesn't stop what's coming. And what's coming is horrific. A completely unhinged Ed, pushed beyond sanity, crashes a plane into the conference center where Susan Day is speaking, killing hundreds. But even amidst the destruction, Clotho and Lachesis succeed in saving one crucial life, Patrick Danville, a boy destined to save the world someday. Atropus makes one final move at causing pain by trying to run down young Natalie. But Ralph, who has already struck a deal with Clotho and Lachesis, jumps in front of the car. In doing so, he trades his life for hers. The two higher beings take his lifeline, and Ralph dies. Finally, after everything, Ralph finds peace, while Atropus, denied of his final kill, is left furious and powerless to stop it. It's a small, human win against a force of cosmic cruelty, and in King's multiverse, that counts for a lot. While the Crimson King is the architect of chaos, characters like Atropus are the bricklayers, the ones who do the dirty work, destabilizing worlds thread by thread, death by death. Atropus comes across as a kind of cosmic assassin, not just of people, but of possibility. And that's what makes him so terrifying. His role is to disturb the pattern, create instability, and allow the Crimson King's influence. What makes Atropus even more unsettling is how unaccountable he is. Clotho and Lachesis can't control him. Ralph can't bargain with him. There's no higher authority to appeal to. He's the representation of all the randomness, the unfairness, and the senseless deaths that real life throws at us. And he enjoys it. That's the worst part. He enjoys it the way a child enjoys pulling wings off flies. Atropus doesn't die, of course. He doesn't even really lose, because you can't kill chaos. But he is thwarted for now. Looks, personality, and powers of Atropus. If evil ever crawled out of a hole in the universe, trailed shoelaces behind it, and giggled like a schoolyard bully, it would probably look and sound a lot like Atropus. You might think this guy is a faceless horror floating in and out of King's story, but Atropus has a face, a body, a mouth that won't stop running, and powers that are as specific and terrifying as they are surreal. And he's not just a boogeyman. He's an entity with presence, animalistic, ugly, unforgettable. Stephen King paints Atropus with such stomach-turning clarity that once you've seen him in your head, he's not going anywhere. Atropus is small, around child-sized, but not in a cute way. Hunched, shrunken, malformed, wiry, and weirdly animalistic. Kinda something that evolved in darkness. King describes him as vaguely humanoid but not fully human. His bald head is enormous and domed. His skin is a sickly gray-green, almost diseased, and seems stretched over a skeleton that was never meant to be pretty. His body is hairless and bald like the other little bald doctors, but where Clotho and Lachesis appear serene or even kind, Atropus is rancid. King describes his face as being full of sharp, darting features, rat-like with gleaming eyes full of mischief and malice. Then there are his hands, long, convulsing fingers always fidgeting, always grasping at the invisible threads of life. When he walks, he doesn't stride or glide like a typical villain. He almost scurries, and it gives him the kind of eerie, jerky movement that feels like it doesn't belong in our world. You can almost hear his bones clicking when he scuttles. He often hunches down or curls himself into strange positions when speaking, like a spider nesting in its own thoughts. And then there's his wardrobe, or lack thereof. Unlike Clotho and Lachesis, who wear pristine white lab coats and resemble kindly but alien doctors, Atropus looks scruffy, filthy even. He's surrounded by the stench of rot and decay. He is petty and has a nasty collection of souvenirs taken from the people whose lives he's ended. Shoelaces, mostly. He talks to them like they're alive, like each lace remembers its former owner. It's sick, yes, but also deeply unsettling. These are his trophies, his keepsakes. In other words, he's the kind of bad guy who's not just evil, he's existentially evil. He represents the idea that some forces just want to watch the fabric of reality fray apart. Atropus isn't your standard death dealer. He doesn't kill because it's time. He kills because it amuses him. He enjoys it. He's not driven by rage or revenge. Nah, that's too basic for Atropus. He is driven by the sheer thrill of interruption. If there's a plan, he wants to ruin it. If there's harmony, he wants to disrupt it. He mocks people constantly. Sarcastic, childish, and erratic, he often taunts people with jokes and riddles, treating the life and death situation like it's a prank. He plays with death the way a bored kid plays with matches. And he's arrogant too. Not in a majestic, godlike way, but in a smug kind of way. Someone who knows you can't touch him. He thinks he's untouchable because, well, in a way, he is. Clotho and Lachesis won't intervene directly. The world can't see him. Ralph is one of the few people who can even perceive him, thanks to his altered awareness from Insomnia. And Atropus loves that imbalance of power. And he's scary because he operates on a level of reality that humans don't even know exists. Well, until it's too late. His power set is weird, eerie, and deeply metaphysical. He doesn't shoot fireballs or raise the dead. What he does is much worse. First and foremost, Atropus can see and manipulate the lifelines of people. Everyone has an aura and a thread, a kind of shimmering line of energy representing their life. These threads aren't metaphorical. They're literal structures of reality connected to each person's fate. And Atropus can reach out and snip them with ease. When he cuts someone's thread, they die, violently and immediately, regardless of whether it was their time. That's the key. Clotho and Lachesis wait for the right moment to do their job. Atropus jumps the line. He's an agent of the random, which means he actively works against destiny and natural balance. He is an erratic figure, shifting from eerily calm to violently explosive in a heartbeat. There's something deeply broken in him, likely because of his long service under the Crimson King. He's cold, manipulative, and calculating, but just unstable enough that you never quite know what he'll do next. Nothing about Atropus is what it seems. He can manipulate perception of places, people, even himself to deceive, terrify, or manipulate. Whether it's wearing the face of a recent victim or making someone believe they're seeing the future. With Atropus, you can't trust your eyes or your mind. He also seems to possess a kind of dimensional awareness. He knows things beyond space and time and can appear and disappear at will, which makes him feel untouchable. He's the kind of villain who can watch you suffer without being seen. And don't underestimate his durability. He isn't human. He doesn't exist in a way that allows for a clean resolution. You don't kill Atropus. You survive him, if you're lucky. And that's a big if. Atropus is not just old. He is timeless. He has existed since the dawn of human life, untouched by age, injury, or time. You can't kill him in any conventional sense. He doesn't grow older. He doesn't get tired. He just is, like gravity or rot, always there, always waiting. And if you were expecting Atropus to be silent, brooding, and stoic, forget it. This guy talks a lot. He's a chatterbox of the worst kind, rambling, unpredictable, and laced with sadism. Marvelous verdict. Stephen King has never been shy about pulling the curtain back on time, death, and whatever weird stuff lies behind reality. And when he does, you can bet it's not going to be pretty. One such is Atropus, popping in with scissors or a mouthful of time-chomping hunger, depending on the day. He's not exactly someone you'd want knocking on your door. One version snips the threads of life like it's just part of his Tuesday routine, while the other version eats up the past. Not exactly bedtime story material. Atropus is part of that strange, chaotic corner of King's world where death isn't always natural, fair, or even necessary. It just happens, thanks to a nasty little creature with a sharp pair of scissors and a bad attitude. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe out there. Thanks, everyone.